The most dangerous moment in modern naval warfare is not when missiles fly, but the silence before. Dawn broke over the Caribbean, roughly 140 miles off the coast of the Venezuela mainland. The USS Gerald R sliced through the glassy ocean, moving with the predictability of a heartbeat. These were not civilian aircraft. They were military, they were fast, and they were hunting a target. On the flight deck, the morning routine froze, as the roar of approaching turbines tore through silence. Humid air rippled with heat distortion, as two Venezuelan attack jets punched through the mist at speed. They leveled out barely 2,000 feet above the swells, with no radio hail or diplomatic notice. They banked violently across the carrier path, a buzz job designed to rattle nerves and test resolve. Intimidation only succeeds if the victim flinches, but the Ford did not flinch as the skipper watched. Through high-powered optics, his expression was stone as he ordered the crew to hold their course. The lead pilot yanked his stick back and rocketed it into a vertical climb against the bright sunrise. His wingman followed with wings wobbling in turbulent air, a reckless maneuver that was suicidally close by. They were too close to a nuclear supercarrier, equipped with sensors tracking a marble 40 miles out. Deep inside the Combat Information Center, air warfare controllers dissected the threat in real time on screens. Their screens rendered the situation in cold infrared as the verdict came back that hard points were empty, with no external ordnance. This was not a strike mission, but a military dare at Mach speed. The problem with playing chicken at sea is, one twitch means you are poking a sleeping giant. At exactly 06:21, the jets peeled off and headed back toward the Venezuelan mainland. For a heartbeat, tension bled away, but relief was premature as the radar picture shifted moments later. What happened next would transform a standard intercept into a potential geopolitical disaster for both involved nations. Inside the center lighting was combat blue, and the atmosphere was thick with a heavy professional dread. Pale green sweeps circled endlessly on monitors, until the pattern broke and new contacts suddenly appeared on screen. A voice snapped to verify new contacts on Vector 2-1 with high speed and climbing. Another pair made 4 boogies total, drawing a straight line toward the strike group as officers watched. They queried systems, but got negative response and no answer to international hails as heavy silence settled. No one panicked because they had drilled this scenario 1,000 times. Inside the cooling fan hum. Above decks, Air Wing 8 sprang into action as 2 Super Hornets were spotted on the catapults. Deck crew in yellow jerseys signaled them forward, while catapult teams dropped down into their firing crouches. Wings locked and trim set, as the shooter touched the deck and a violent gray blur blasted. The tower tracked the fighters as they roared upward, banking hard left to meet the incoming threats. Their orders were precise: to intercept and identify, as the operations officer monitored the large display below. The gap was shrinking rapidly from 60 to 52 miles, as combat advised tightening defensive screens. Destroyers moved to the vanguard while the Ford refused to turn, keeping speed and heading constant now. To a civilian, it looked like stubbornness, but to the Navy, it was the language of dominance. We do not alter course for noise. As Super Hornets punched through 15,000 feet. 0626? What they were about to witness would prove that this was certainly no simple navigational error today. At altitude, sunlight hit the Hornets like a welding torch, as turbofans howled against thin Caribbean air. Viper 1 checked his tactical display to see 4 solid contacts, with tight spacing climbing very fast. Viper 1 called tally-ho on Bandit bearing 217, while Control asked to confirm identification. It confirmed Venezuelan jets and defensive rules of engagement, agreeing to keep the interaction professional and safe. Far below the ford was a gray splinter on the ocean, flanked by escorts in rigid formation. The carrier radar painted the battle space with godlike fidelity, feeding speed and altitude to the helmet displays. At 06:28, the lead jets burst through a cloud layer with contrails slashing sky. Viper 1 ordered the unidentified aircraft to identify immediately as they closed on the carrier strike group. This signal is being broadcast on all channels. You are in violation of our airspace. Turn your aircraft around immediately. Venezuelan leads slashed across the Hornet nose, clocking 400 knots in a pass so tight. Proximity alarm screamed, and the wingman yelled to watch spacing as Viper 1 tightened his grip hard. Viper 1 stated they were not there to dance. Observe as radar tracked the drama instantly. Flight paths intersected with terrifying margins, as combat reported unsafe maneuvers, and the bridge maintained steady posture. One thing was crystal clear now, because this was not a navigational error but a calculated trap. At 17,000 feet, the Super Hornets stalked the Venezuelan formation like wolves, trailing a confused herd. The sky was bright and tension brittle, while wispy clouds drifted underneath the endless, azure Caribbean floor. On the camera, the jets drifted closer together, locking formation with no missiles visible. On the wings, empty pylons glinted in the harsh light, which was a textbook style of military visual intimidation tactic. Control heard they were cutting the flight path and ordered the pilots to maintain their shadow. High overhead, a Hawkeye circled, with its massive radar dome feeding a continuous stream of data down. Every twitch was logged as the crew below watched the geometry unfold like a deadly chess match. He cut across the vector, but the pilot voice did not waver, reporting the front foot of the box ass immediately. Range was 200 meters and deep in the nerve center. The radar did not miss beats. It plotted jets in high-definition clarity, while on the main display, the range counter dropped lower. Bridge recommended spinning up weapons to standby, and the command was affirmative to hold weapons tight now. Take it as loose lease. The jets banked again, tightening the circle, and pushing the envelope to within seconds of a collision. And this time, someone was about to make a catastrophic miscalculation at 06:32 hours. Inside the Combat Information Center, the mood was electric but controlled, as every console glowed with precision. Operators watched 4 red symbols weaving above blue, icons of the fleet, while the bridge remained quiet. There was no shouting or chaos, just discipline, focus, as contacts close to 12 miles at speed. The tactical action officer replied to copy, setting systems to manual and weapons to a warm standby. On deck, sailors craned their necks, unable to see jets yet, but they felt the pressure building. It vibrated through steel deck plates and echoed in coded squawks, while the Ford held steady course. At Twinsnet's course north-northwest, the destroyers tightened the perimeter, erecting a steel wall there. Electronic warfare suites hummed to life, suddenly jamming the incoming sensors just enough to fuzzy targeting solutions. On the flight deck, the dance continued, as fuel hoses retracted and directors signaled with hand movements. Alert crews prepared for a second launch wave without panic, because that unnerving calmness was the point. Inside the Combat Information Center, a steady voice pierced the quiet to address the unfolding situation. Now, bridge combat contacts at 8 miles and closing. As the captain stepped to the center console glass, he ordered them not to touch throttles, because a United States carrier does not flinch under pressure. Logic rippled through the command team that moving for show-offs means the ocean stops respecting flags. Outside, the K-8 jets pressed their attack, dropping low enough that shadows raced across the waves. Then one of them committed as the lead jet rolled, inverted and dove straight for the group. His wingman followed, slicing air like a knife in a maneuver that looked insane from the bridge. Combat reported contacts within 5 miles in altitude, crashing as the Phalanx turret swiveled automatically below its 20mm Gatling gun track. The lead bandit detecting threats faster than a human synapse. The only thing holding back a wall of tungsten was a silent override command to wait now. In the air, Viper 1 and Viper 2 snapped their helmets toward the dive, with cameras rolling. The American pilot could see into the other cockpit, seeing visor down, jaw set, and fighting hands. Forward control heard they were coming in hot at range 1.2 miles. So hold lines. The first jet roared over the bow of the destroyer Mason, with engine screaming and wake turbulence. Sonic pressure hit the water like a physical blow, shaking the ship with zero margin for error. It shot past Viper 2 with less than 600 feet of clearance, which was a miss. Fort Tower called unsafe maneuvering, but the radio reply was cool as ice to simply maintain discipline. The Hornets did not bite with radar locks, but simply slid into the position, shadowing them like ghosts. On the Ford, the gun barrel spun silently with sensors locked, but the chambers remained cold today. For 10 seconds, history hung in the balance, being one twitch away from a massive fireball explosion. Almost anticlimactically, the jets hauled back on the stick and banked away toward the southern horizon line. One turned east for the coast while the other lingered, circling wide, wanting one final look there. The combat center did not blink, keeping every camera and sensor locked on the departing aircraft now. Even as they vanished, the ship was recording everything, from heat signatures to flight profiles and emissions. Up high, the Hornets kept distance, confirming hostiles turning south, with speed dropping and no weapons visible. Control ordered them to continue shadow, but do not pursue past 50 miles into the hazy distance. It felt peaceful for a moment until a warning tone chirped, a faint spike in his ear. One jet had just pinged the carrier group with a targeting radar, which was brief but deliberate. They logged the signal, but the Ford did not react with evasive turns, only data collection discipline. An hour later, Venezuelan state TV aired grainy footage, claiming they had forced the American fleet retreat. The world saw propaganda, but the Navy saw a different reality, because the Ford never deviated once. By noon, the truth sat in the gray area, that thin line between deterrence and provocation there. Inside the Pentagon, analysts replayed the infrared tapes frame by frame, analyzing every jerk of the stick. What they saw was not a calculated strike, but a show of force that lost control fast. For naval strategists, this was textbook gray zone warfare, designed to test reflexes before a superpower blinks. The Ford did not blink, and that restraint sent a message louder than any missile could. Today, The ship represents the apex of naval engineering, yet her most critical weapon is actually human judgment. One wrong decision by a proud aviator, and the world is 1 second away from international crisis. The Venezuelan pilots want to send a message, but the Ford answered with silence. Only power affords. Because the truth is dominance at sea is about judgment, timing and discipline, which the Ford demonstrated. So here's a question for you. If you were in that cockpit watching jets diving down, would you trust the rules of engagement and hold fire? Or would you take the shot immediately? Drop your answer in the comments because below. I want to see how you would handle that. Hit like if you learned something new, and subscribe if you want to see more maritime stories. Share this video with someone who thinks aircraft carriers are just big, floating airports on the water. If you want to support the channel directly, join the fleet on our Winds of Thought page. When it comes to rough waters, you do not need to shout when you are the loudest.